Welcome to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen. I am your co-host, but I don't co-host it. I don't host it myself. I host it with Michael Doherty. Hey, you guys, you know what we call him here?
The Silver Fox.
The Silver Fox.
She remembered.
Tanya, why? Tanya, why? Tanya. I was thinking of somebody else. Huh? Is that what it is? It's not because he's foxy.
Yeah. Okay, now come on. You're gonna
just a little. Anyways, it's good to be here. Happy Monday to everybody out there, and hope everybody's weekend was great. Mm-hmm. And Families Action is brought to you by your local hometown station, AM 1220. We've been on the air now. Is it going on 13 years or is it going on 14?
I think it's going on 14.
In a long time, so we very much appreciate that important message that we are allowed to give out there, so thank you.
That's right.
Also by the foundation, I'll let you talk about that.
The foundation, one of the things I love to talk about with the foundation I haven't mentioned in a while, and Cary, that's the Action Academy.
Yes.
The free public sober school for local junior and senior high school students, and you expanded it this year, so it's happening and it's successful.
You know, what's really cool about that, it's not a high school and it's not a middle school, it's a both school. It's 8th grade and on, and there are some sober schools in our country, but I think we're one of the only, or a drug rehabilitation center and a school district actually partner together to make this happen. So we're taking kids that just, if they're either getting out of rehab or they're thinking about going to rehab, but they want to stay sober. And we know that by the time we find an adolescent that's using drugs, so's everyone they know. So think about an adult. I do an intervention on you. You go to rehab. You come home to your family, and you're at work, and you got support. Now think about an adolescent. They're trying to stay sober, and everyone they know is using drugs. So they go back to school, and the peer pressure is intense. So what we're doing now is that sober school really gives them support all day long, where they can go to school, get counseling, get drug tested, get their school stuff at the same time. So it's been extremely successful. It's something that we're very proud of at the Academy. Very cool stuff.
Oh, you should be, and I like the fact that in some cases, if they need to be, the students can stay there in that school.
The purpose of the Action Academy is really not to keep kids in a bubble, but it's to get them sober, keep them, so help them stay sober, get a support, and get them back to school where they can be strong enough to say no.
Yeah.
And to be able to graduate with their class. That doesn't mean that they have to do that. You know what I'm saying, Michael? That means that that's our goal. But if there's adolescents that need to stay there for support, well, then by all means they could stay there all through their schooling.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so it's really a pretty neat thing.
That's wonderful. And I just need to mention one other thing from the Action Family Foundation, Cary, and that is something we mentioned almost every week, and that's the free parent support group. That's every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. at Canyon High School. You run that.
I do.
You run part of it, and
I do.
It's a marvelous thing for parents who say, hey, I just don't know what to do here. And it's free. And it's free, and there is a parent group. I run the parent group. I have other people in my group. I have Wendy and Laura and John and the people that really come and help out and do a wonderful job. So props to you guys. I appreciate that. And then we have a teen group. And we do a lot of good stuff in that teen group. I have 2 counselors that come there, and our goal, we work with anything there. I mean, from substance abuse to self-esteem to school problems to you name it problems. So if you have a teenager and you're saying, should I come? Yeah, come. And then I hear from parents all the time, they're afraid to come. What if I know somebody? Well, hey, guess what? If you know someone, they're there for the same reason. And if we want to, so there is nothing to be embarrassed about. Nobody judges anybody there. We're just there to help and help figure out solutions. And believe me, there's almost always a solution for whatever's going on if you're around the right people that know how to find it. Yeah.
So, and just about substance abuse, I mean, let's just think about this for a second. In fact, let's spend, I know we're not supposed to have silence on the air, but let's spend 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. And when we're done, I'll tell you why. That break was for the probably between 5 and 10 people that will lose their lives during this show from an accidental drug overdose.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. Between 5 and 10 people every hour die accidentally from a drug overdose. That's not including car crashes, suicides because of drugs, rapes. I can go murders. I can go on forever about it. It's actually one of the leading causes of deaths, even over car crashes and gun violence now. It's pretty terrible. So during our show, a minimum of 5 people that are getting high, that are thinking they're having fun, will lose their life.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Cary, we should probably introduce our special guest today.
Why don't we do that, and then you can do the action?
Well,
files.
you know, today our show is called The Road to Sobriety. And we have with us Sage.
Hello.
And Sage convinced her mother to come along. Tanya, welcome to the show, Sage and Tanya.
Thank you.
Hi.
And now we're going to talk about some action file items, and if you have something to contribute to this, feel free to join us in the conversation.
But I have to say something before that.
Okay.
So I walked in my office the other day, and there was a note and somebody's 9-month chip, meaning somebody's been sober for 9 months.
Right.
I can't tell you how it made my not my day or my week, but my year. How's that? We'll talk more about that after you're done.
Okay. Cary, what we've been talking about with all these overdoses, heroin overdoses are on the rise in a North Carolina town, causing 3 car crashes in a single week. Police say that intoxicated drivers high on the illegal drug, this is heroin we're talking about now, caused 3 separate crashes in the small city of High Point, North Carolina this past week. High Point, known as the furniture capital of America, has a serious problem with opiate addiction. The city saw double the number of heroin overdoses in 2016 than in the previous year, which is something we've been hearing about a lot.
Well, I've been screaming for 10 years, as you know, that we're in the midst of an epidemic, and I've been screaming before we were having an epidemic, that the opioids out there are so seriously addictive that it's going to be terrible, and it's going to be worse than the 70s, and drug abuse is different than it's ever been before. I was filming with the Eyewitness News Friday about middle-aged, especially men, 50 years age and up, that are committing suicide. And it's the highest number it's ever been. That middle-aged men, and women, but men more, are committing suicide, and they're linking it somewhat to opiates now. Which is, if you think about it, terrible.
It is. And there's a number of reasons for that, up to and including the fact that when people get a little older, oftentimes they're dealing with physical ailments, pain, and such like that. So they get the medications prescribed to them, and the next thing you know, they're addicted to it.
Right.
And they instead of taking 1, they may forget and take 2, or they may take 2 just because they think they need that to help the pain. And so, yeah, they're
And coupled with other issues that they already have.
Exactly.
Feeling less than, financial instability,
A lot of stress.
family issues. A lot of adults, men and women, are raising their grandkids now. Baby boomers are taking care of their parents. So there's so much stuff on their shoulders right now, and then throw the financial stuff, like I said, and some kind of drug addiction. And what I was saying on the news, and I think this is important that we all think about this for a second. The faces of addiction, as we'll talk about today, is different than it's ever been before. I mean, we used to think of an alcoholic or an addict. Let's pick an alcoholic, for instance. Alcoholic is the guy on Skid Row. That's what we thought, right?
Yep.
So far from the truth.
and we all have an image in our mind.
We all have an image. Then and I remember when I was a kid and I had to go to an AA meeting because I got myself in trouble. And I figured, oh my goodness, there's going to be a whole bunch of Skid Row people. I walked in there, there's business people. In fact, there was a friend of mine's father, and he's a big time actor, and he was the speaker. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Now, that didn't really go over well because I went to dinner that night and he was sitting at a table drinking wine. So it's like, okay,
Whoops.
these people are not really telling the truth, but that's not true. He wasn't. But then you think about addiction. And it used to be the person that, you see the kids hanging on the corner in the alley, and that's what you thought. But addiction has changed. It's got so many different faces today. Faces number one is the kid in the alley that we thought about, or the adult in the alley that's, looks scroungy, and this guy's got issues or she's got issues. But then you got other issues now with substance abuse, because look at marijuana, for instance.
Which we did last week.
And we'll spend a minute on about it. It's legal. So you got so many of our youngsters that are going out there and smoking this high potent stuff. And now parents are looking at it like it's a rite of passage. Everybody's doing it. So many parents are giving up. Used to be parents called us and said what was in the test, and we'd say THC, and they'd freak out. Now they go, okay, that's it, thanks, click. And they don't even want to talk about it. It's like done. So you got these kids that said, I'll never. They start with a cigarette. They said, I'll never use pot. It's only pot. It's natural. They get convinced. They get desensitized, and they start smoking that. All the other drugs are what you call drugs of opportunity. All over. And you were talking about some heroin in some other city.
That's right.
How about right here? We're having an explosion of opiates here in Santa Clarita.
We certainly are.
When it comes to these kids. And I'll tell you, some of the reason is they start with the pot, they go to a party, they start drinking. Somebody says, try this, no way. They drink a little bit more. They start losing their rationalization deal. And before you know it, they try something. It feels so good. And they're almost immediately addicted to whatever that is, if it was crystal meth or heroin and that kind of stuff. So the drugs today are so much more potent than ever before. So those are those addicts. Now we're also seeing the other kind of addicts, which are people that have no track record of drugs at all whatsoever. They go to a hospital, they go to a doctor, they go to a dentist, they have a car accident, their back hurts, whatever the deal is. They get surgery, they come out, they're on Demerol in the hospital or morphine, they come out with a bottle of pills. Those bottle of pills are not as strong as what they're taking in the hospital. So they instead of one, they need 4. So before you know it, and these pills are marvelous for short-term pain. But anything long-term, and your body is going to become addicted to that drug. So we have those issues now, and then they don't know how to stop. And when they stop taking, they're feeling more pain, probably because of the addiction and the withdrawals, but they can't place it. So they think, oh my gosh, I need more of these drugs, and they keep taking them, and it becomes a vicious cycle. And then especially with adults, along with that kind of an accidental addiction, any kind of an opiate addiction, comes other issues, depression, feeling less than, hopeless, helpless. And all drug addiction is really a disease of loneliness. When we start doing that and you have to lie to people and you have to sneak around and take all these pills, we start feeling lonely and miserable, and our self-esteem is low. So it makes sense why so many elderly are taking their lives, and why so many kids are addicted to these drugs.
And it's so easy, like you were saying, and I always remember, and I've said this a couple of times on the show, but many of us remember, and I say remember, he's still with us, but Jerry Lewis, the comedian, the actor, he was doing a show somewhere, I think it was in Vegas, and part of the act, he was supposed to fall. And what happened when he fell wrong, and he landed on one of these metal microphone connections that our microphones are connected to the console with, and when he did, he fell on his spine. So he was in tremendous pain from that accident, and he was prescribed some kind of a painkiller, and he wound up addicted to it. He had a hard time, but he got himself free from it, but for a long time he was battling that.
Well, let's get it straight. Pills today are meant to help people deal with pain.
And everybody in our society...
But I do want to say this. Pills do not cure pain. They mask pain. So if we really want to deal with our pain meds might be necessary, but we have to find other ways to deal with the pain versus mask it. Because if all we do is mask it, it's never going to go away.
That's right.
When we bring people in our rehabs, and they've been hooked on Vicodin or Oxy or whatever you want to say, Percocet, and they've been taking it for pain, as soon as they start, we withdraw them, and we start giving them just what is it called? Not Tylenol, Advil. It's an anti-inflammatory. They actually feel better with that than they did with the Vicodin. So there's so many different things that we can look at today when it comes to chronic pain versus pain meds.
And sadly, we are absolutely in our society inundated with pharmaceutical ads day and night that tell us that all we need is a pill for everything, and I mean everything. So, and people are waiting for that magic pill that will make them lose weight. But it's so sad, because as soon as something happens to us, we want to know if there's a pill for it, and we're ready to take them. We're all set to go.
Well, and there's different and better pills coming out all the time to help people deal with issues.
Yeah.
So we have to really take a look at what's going on. And for the people that are out there taking pain meds or anti-anxiety meds, which is probably the most written prescription there is for anti-anxiety stuff, really pay attention to your body. Realize what's going in there can become emotionally and physically addictive, and talk to your doctor and really watch what you're doing.
Yeah. Now, last week, Cary, we spent the hour on our show talking about issues with marijuana.
Right.
And shortly thereafter, on Wednesday of last week, this is what happened. The city council, and it had nothing to do with our radio show, by the way, but the city council of Santa Clarita decided during the January 25th meeting to extend an existing moratorium that bans the sale, cultivation, and manufacturing of recreational and medicinal marijuana. The moratorium was put forth by the city council's, or the city attorney's office, in response to California voters passing Proposition 64, which legalized recreational pot in the state. And we are going to have next Monday. We're going to have Cameron Smythe, the mayor, on, who will be talking about this. But this is great.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, people are all over. I mean, we're so laxed on marijuana, THC today. Nobody seems to care about it. And I'll tell you what. I'm in the midst of dealing with your kids. I see them every day. So I see the power that this THC has on your adolescents, and it's something you better be afraid of. You better pay attention to, because I'm seeing some pretty horrible things right now. I'm not even going to talk about the people that come to our behavioral health unit that we're testing, and they're psychotic, and the only thing that's showing is THC, and they have no history of psychosis. I'm not even talking about the 12 and 13-year-olds that we're bringing into our rehabs, in our outpatient clinics, because this marijuana that's, what is it, healthy, that they're saying? That it's
natural,
legal, it's natural. Yeah. I can't, that they're in such crisis that we're even worried about short-term rehabs. We're thinking about sending them away for a long-term, because that's how messed up they are. So we better start paying long attention to what's going on and realize that, hey, there's a lot of legal stuff out there that aren't good for you. Alcohol in teenagers, it's a prescription for disaster. THC, marijuana, and teenagers, a prescription for disaster.
And Cary, you're just not talking to hear yourself speak. You're the executive director of behavioral health over at Henry Mayo Newhall Hospital.
What does that mean?
Well, that means you're there. You're on the front line.
That means all the psychiatric stuff that goes through our ER 24 hours a day goes through me.
Right.
That means all the holds I hear about. That means all the drug abuse, drug overdoses go through me. And I've been doing this for about 30 years.
Yeah, so you know what you're talking about. You're not whistling Dixie here.
I would hope so. I hear people say, "Oh, what's his name says he knows more about pot than you do." There's a lot of people that might know more about it than me. But here's what I do know: I deal with people that are addicted to it every day. Been doing it for 30-something years. So think about it. Yeah. Maybe I know a little bit. Maybe just so. Just a little.
And that's the thing. We're not even here to argue with people. No. We're just saying these are the facts, and you need to be able to look at the facts before you make that decision.
Yes.
And I'm thankful that the city has done this, and we'll be able to talk with Mayor Smythe when he comes next Monday. So you want to tune in for that. That's going to be great. Cary, we're running out of time. We're going to have to take a break here shortly, but we're going to be talking with Sage and Tanya, because Sage has some good news for the listeners. Every time you have somebody here...
You know what happened with Sage?
What happened?
When she was young?
What?
She was walking down the street.
Oh.
No, really. And as she was walking down the street, she looked up into the sky. And a bong fell into her hands.
No kidding?
And a little voice from that bong said, "Smoke me, please." And guess what she did?
She listened to the voice.
She listened to the voice and smoked it. And guess what? there was problems.
I was going to say, I suspect life wasn't all a bowl of roses after that.
It was a bowl of pot for a minute.
Well, yeah,
but it'd be
and her mother is here to keep her on the straight and narrow.
Well,
today,
we have
right?
the dynamic.
So she
I know
can't,
Mom too, Mike. We have the dynamic
I see,
here.
okay.
So we're going to spend a little time
But what I'm
talking to
saying,
both of them.
Sage, is that your mom will know if you're not telling us the truth.
Oh, yeah.
You know how moms are.
She'll know if I'm not telling her.
Exactly. There's a whole big story here that you're not aware of yet, but you will be. But I will
Okay.
say this before we take a break. I have 36 years clean and sober this Christmas Eve. And my father died when I had a year and 6 days sober. And he died from cancer caused by drug addiction and alcoholism. And one of the last things he said to me was, I wish I could have gotten sober with you. I wish the drugs wasn't as important to me as they were. And we'll talk about that more when we come back from break. This is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.